My name is Scott Thomas. I'm with Proponisi, and we're going to look a little bit into AI, what AI is all about, how it can affect the call center, how it all started and how we got to where we are today. And just a little bit of background on Proponisi. We've done a lot of work in a variety of industries, including, the tolling industry, automotive, hospitality, healthcare. And we're a SaaS application that helps contact centers with employee engagement and using AI for quality monitoring or for post interaction call summaries. And we've had the benefit of working with a lot of different clients, both in the public and private sector, here in the US and abroad. And we're really passionate about contact centers. I've been in the industry for, about 30 years. I started as an agent and still remember my new hire training, and then held various roles up until I was running some call centers for Bell South Internet Services in the early days of dial-up and DSL internet service, and then eventually started doing consulting with companies like FedEx and Delta, and then joined Proponisi when we kicked things off. And again, our application was really developed with the heart of the contact center. It's probably the most misunderstood department of any organization, yet, your least performing agent will talk to more people in a day than the highest paid executive will in a year. So there's a lot of interesting things going on in the contact center, and AI is definitely the new shiny object, so to speak, and for good reason in some cases. That's having some significant impacts on the contact center. So let's go ahead and just jump into it a little bit. I thought these were some interesting statistics. That first one, just looking at how many companies that are solely focused on AI and have AI under their banner or in their company name that have been created just in the last couple of years with all the emerging components of AI and all the LLMs and generative AI and now agentic AI, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a moment. But definitely something that you'll notice. In fact, if you are one who attends contact center conferences, you've probably noticed when you've gone in the last few years, there's a lot of new vendors on the trade show floor with either AI or maybe even GPT in the title of their company, because everyone is going all in on AI. And just a couple of other stats just in general with consumers and people just using it. It looks like 65% have spoken back and forth. 52% of U.S. adults now use a language model like ChatGPT. 99% of Americans use at least one AI-enabled product in the last week, but most people don't even realize that it is AI. Only 16% of American workers say they use AI for some part of their job, which is kind of interesting. 63% say they use AI not very much or not at all. And then, of course, just from a social media standpoint, 34 million AI-generated images created daily, and now 71% of social media images now AI-generated. So a lot has happened over the last 3 years when people, weren't even really talking about AI. So just to kind of talk a little bit about what AI is and some clarification and definition. So at its core, AI is basically, a computer system that's designed to simulate specific human tasks, primarily things like language and communication, and then, lately in terms of image recognition. So just like a human can communicate and see things and react to the things it sees or make comments about the things it sees, that's what AI is doing today, and kind of defines some of the core components of what AI is like today. It's using machine learning, and if you've heard that term and you're not too sure what that means, that's really where you've got, say, a certain specific task that this AI is going to be doing or analyzing, and you train it by teaching it. And teaching it means basically giving it data that shows what it's going to be evaluating, let's just say as an example, and then showing how that evaluation would look. So for example, we'll talk a little bit later about using AI to do quality monitoring or quality assurance in your contact center. You would basically have a model where you're showing it the scorecard, giving it exposure to call data or transcripts and letting it see what's going on in the transcript, and then giving it instructions for how to grade, and then giving it examples of where a human has graded it, and then allowing it to take that logic and start grading on its own. And then with machine learning, you can have a feedback mechanism or feedback loop that lets users sort of do a thumbs up or a thumbs down on how accurate the data was, how accurate the evaluation was, and then that data can be fed back in to the AI, and the machine learning allows it to improve based on that feedback, and it continues to get better and better. And then just some clarification, AI's intelligence is really, around mathematical relationships and data. It's not self-aware, at least not yet, and doesn't have feelings, even though some of the latest models that allow you to have those conversations or, go back and forth with, a spoken conversation are feeling more and more real all the time. And then lately, you might be hearing about, generative versus agentic AI. Generative is what, really launched with ChatGPT when it first hit the scene in 2022. And it really is, basically working at creating, content and understanding things related to text, images, audio, based on certain patterns and things that it's learned during the training, while agentic AI kind of takes on this independence and is autonomous in some ways, where it can take actions to achieve specific goals by making decisions or picking tools it's going to use or interacting in the environment it's in without requiring explicit human instructions. Now, to be clear, this AI is not fully autonomous. So even when you're talking about an agentic agent and you're talking about that agentic agent having autonomy, there's really still guardrails and some explicit details behind the scenes in its training, in its decision making. So it's not just going out and completely, going on its own. It's really still, it needs that human interaction, that feedback loop, and still some specific, guardrails in place for it to be able to take action on its own. So this is an interesting timeline. I'm actually glad we're talking about something that's older than me, which if you go back to 1950, the Turing test, which is a test that was designed basically for people to look at and evaluate conversations that have occurred with a computer or some sort of machine, and see if the conversation can fool a human into thinking this is something that a human is saying versus this is something that is a machine is using or evaluating the machine intelligence. And so that was one of the kind of foundational concepts that started laying the groundwork for AI. And then the term AI was created by people in the study in the field of AI in 1955. And then, a couple of other things. Some of this I was just kind of researching for this webinar. The ELIZA in 1966, which was something I was unaware of, but it was actually one of the first chat bots that could simulate a conversation, and it was on an old IBM mainframe that would allow people to interact with it. And again, it was very unique for its time. And then after that, the 1970s through the 1980s are kind of referred to as AI winter, which things just kind of went cold in the research. There wasn't really much happening. The next big milestone would be Deep Blue in 1997. And you may have seen this in the news. It did make a lot of news when this was occurring, but it was where an IBM computer, beat one of the world champions of chess, and that made a lot of headline news that now a machine is thinking strategically or has learned the game of chess and is able to to beat a human. And then we see things like Siri, which I'm sure familiar with if you've got any Apple devices, where you can have these assistants that you can interact with. IBM came out with Watson in 2011, which had a lot of natural language processing components and was in a lot of early AI technologies related to transcription of calls, as an example, or pulling data together into a way that Watson could analyze it and analyze across company data to be able to break down sort of silos in the data and help give a larger view of data. 2014, Alexa came along, love her or hate her, you might get into arguments with her. But again, a home assistant now in the home, allowing consumers to not only have conversations and ask questions without going over and doing a search on a computer, but also control lighting and other smart devices in their homes. Then there was AlphaGo, which was created to play the game Go. And again, it's a much more complicated game than chess. And it was able to, beat humans in this game. And then, I guess, basically the writing was on the wall at this point, because then comes the ethic guidelines around responsible AI development. And then finally, what you're all probably aware of in November of 2022 was ChatGPT hits the scene. And the thing that was so unique about it is its powerful abilities to just, have a person with non-technical skills. You wouldn't have to know any kind of technology, just, talking to it like you would a human, and then having it respond and be able to help. And I know my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law are both college professors. And I mean, when this hit the scene, you would have thought college was over. They were really concerned about, students. It seemed like every student was just running their papers through ChatGPT. And of course, that launched a whole bunch of other companies now that can verify if a paper, not only is plagiarized, but was it written, by a human? So kind of an interesting timeline there. What AI does really well today in contact centers is in terms of, offloading calls. And this is sort of, I'll talk about this in just a minute a little bit more, but it's sort of what we've been through with other technology advancements in contact centers. I mean, when the IVR came out, what it really was able to do, if you're doing it well, is you can have containment in that IVR for sort of simple required inquiries. So if you're finding out what are easy calls, typically those might have been, payment calls and still are, or updating an address or different things like that, it's able to offload those. And now with AI and some of the chat agents or voice agents that you could deploy, it's really great at handling some of those self-service options and can, resolve a lot of those things and be contained within an AI channel that works very well today. It's also obviously able, as long as you're prepared and your data is prepared, that it can analyze, just at scale, large volumes of data where it can identify trends and, push details that just would have been impossible to spot, before this happened, especially when you think of things like quality monitoring or customer feedback surveys. A lot of times we would avoid having a lot of comments in those components, because what do you do with comments? How do you analyze a million comments that have come in? And that's something that AI can really, help with, is looking at those large volumes and finding patterns and insights and making predictions. And then just in general, how the speed, its efficiency, and then the savings of being able to, deliver self-service, and in most cases probably have a mechanism that could hand it off to an agent if needed, if it got too difficult. But that's another area where you can deploy AI to help in some of those channels. So the challenges today are, there's no, with AI, there's no true emotional or contextual understanding. It's really just data in, data out. The better it's trained in a particular domain or business case, the better it's going to be. Again, as long as there's human, feedback going on and training happening. But you might have also heard of hallucinations, which, when you're using some of these large language models that you see, like ChatGPT or like Claude, which are super powerful and can, do a lot of things for you, because they have access to search the web, or because they have access to be creative, there can be hallucinations that occur that, can cause it to give misinformation. And if you've used, ChatGPT or Claude, you'll see the little disclaimer that, it could potentially have the information wrong because of some of those issues. And again, it's not really going to be perfect, and it'll struggle to just be creative out of the box without some sort of additional training and guardrails put in place. Whereas when you think of some of the human strengths that AI is lacking is, actually showing genuine empathy, having some sort of emotional IQ, having critical thinking or understanding things and reading between the lines. Now, granted, every day AI is going to be better than it is today. And you do see where it really struggled in some of these areas when it first came out, versus what you're seeing today and the improvements that are making. It is getting better and better. But even if you go back to the test I mentioned earlier, the Turing test, if you have a long enough conversation with even the best models, even today, that test is going to probably reveal to you that, okay, this is not a human I'm interacting with. It might take a little longer than it did, say, a year ago. And tomorrow, it'll take even less time to be able to determine that. And again, it's only going to get better. But again, thinking of how to handle exceptions or outliers, that's another thing it will struggle with. I had heard the CIO from, or the CTO from Wendy's fast food corporation, and they've been implementing AI in their drive-through. And, they still have to have a human in the background to take over and recover, even though they're getting the AI to handle 80%, 85% of the drive-through requests. There are still times where a human needs to barge in for those outlying issues. The other interesting thing is every one of the Wendy's where this has been implemented, the employees feel great about it because it's offloading something that no one wants to rotate into or cover. People would rather be doing the other tasks than handling those orders at the drive-through window, which we can all relate to the sound quality on those and some of the other challenges. And again, humans are going to be here to train and guide and help AI continue to get better and better. So moving on, another timeline that I won't go in, too deep about, but again, the panic, I think, in the contact center industry, especially for maybe supervisors and agents, is, that's going to replace everyone and there's not going to be humans working anymore. And this is just a timeline of some of the other technologies that have come along that have, put that kind of panic out there. Now, granted, I would say this is the most powerful tool to come along. But again, initially, what you're going to be seeing is that it's continuing to take and offload, the easy tasks and some of the even slightly difficult tasks, and then still need that human to some point where you might be shrinking staff a little bit. But I don't think in the next, few years you're going to see AI taking over all of that components. I just think the contact center is going to look a little bit different, and I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more here in just a moment. But again, fax machines, email, IVR systems, live chatbots going back to 2016, all of these components were supposed to replace agents. And if anything, they might have shrunk agents just a little bit, but, and IVR being the best case scenario, but it's also, again, mostly focused on those small tasks. And there's also going to be more challenges for where you use AI depending on, the business you're in. We do a lot of work with government agencies related to healthcare, and depending on your customer base and depending on how they like to be served, there could be cases where you're doing a hybrid and you're leveraging AI where you can, but certain generations of people just may never adopt this, and that could be the majority of your client base, depending on what your product is. If you're doing healthcare around Medicaid or Medicare, that might be a generation currently, for the most part, that's not a fast adopter of the AI technologies and really want to discuss their healthcare needs with a human, just as an example. Another, kind of interesting lesson about this, and this is another thing that I think we're going to see in the call center industry, is back in the 2000 era 2000 to 2018, there was a focus with banks where they started putting and implementing ATMs in locations and making those easy access where customers could come in and do their banking 24/7, just come up to the machine, do whatever they needed to do. And as a result, even though there was widespread, adoption of using those devices, between 2000 and 2018, teller jobs grew 10%. And it really came down to the fact that people, having the relationship with their bankers and with the people they're interacting with in the bank was more important than the convenience of using a tool like an ATM device. And so I think, as AI gets smarter and is able to continue to take over and handle some of the tedious tasks and, remove some of the, easy calls and still have that failover to an agent, you're still going to see things where, a human touch is needed. And in some cases, as I've put in this last bullet point, it could become a premium differentiator where, there's white glove service that you pay a little bit more to have a human to interact with versus leveraging AI and clients, or companies taking advantage of that by offering a service like that. And again, AI handling tedious tasks, humans can handle the nuance, again, which is why I think you'll see this hybrid continue to be what's happening. Now, how to prepare your contact center for AI, just a couple of things to talk about. One is data readiness. There are tools that you can sort of plug into different, components like a website or a knowledge base where AI can learn that content and basically be able to answer questions about data like that. But when you're talking about a large scale business operation where maybe you even have, strong security policies like maybe your FedRAMP, or maybe you've got high trust or NIST 853 and PCI and a lot of this other data that's sensitive, you've really got to be prepared for what data you're going to let AI have access to, and how are you going to still meet those security guidelines to do that. And so that's one of the things, as well as where do you have the data? And, do you have a database related to contact center details and agent KPIs and another database that's related to customer feedback or CRM, and do all these need to be linked? AI is not going to just consume that data. In most cases, the data is going to have to be prepared through some sort of embedding or vectorizing the database, where that data, especially unstructured data like text, like comments from a customer or comments from agent surveys, etc., there will be a need to, put that into a data flow that an AI component can consume and react to and provide value from. So there is something around data. I've mentioned training, which is another piece of the puzzle. Just taking a model that's kind of a jack of all trades, like most of the models you interact with today. You really want to try to refine that model, or have some AI solution where those models are being trained to handle specific components, as well as guardrails, which are things that kind of are guiding principles designed of what it should or should not do, and how it should do things, and how it should present things, etc. And then those feedback loops coming through humans to provide feedback. And these are all things we can help with. We leverage AI in Proponisi, and would love to have a call with you if you wanted to set something up and talk about it. I'm going to talk about like some of the things you might consider as first steps, but these are all things we take very seriously, especially the security piece. We comply to various security compliances, and we want to make sure as how we're using AI is responsible, and also meeting all those security compliances that you'd expect. So again, without doing those things I mentioned, these are just a couple of interesting examples where Google aired a commercial at the Super Bowl back in February, and you may have seen it, where it made a statement that Gouda cheese accounts for 50 to 60% of the world's cheese consumption. And somebody had just, asked the AI a question about that and got that answer. And it turns out that that's not true. That was a hallucination, like we were talking about earlier. And then Cursor, which is an AI tool that's actually very popular. It helps developers with coding and uses AI to help that. But it ended up sending out an email letting people know about a new policy in place that continues to reset your password. And it sent this out to a large group of customers, and drove up call volume, and people were wanting to cancel because of this new policy that this AI support agent kind of went rogue and sort of sabotaged the organization without even realizing it. And that just happened last month. So there are things to be concerned about, and as long as you're being careful and methodical, these really are great tools. But just trying to take something right out of the box and using it without some sort of methodology behind it is where the risks are. So again, how to prepare. I've got the data readiness in here again, just because it is important to mention. But what we would suggest is, start with some proven sort of high yielding ROI applications that AI is really good at. And one of those would be related to QA and agent assist and doing some post-call summaries. So that's what's in this first, section here. These 3 bullet points, and these are services that we provide, and that we work with you to take your existing scorecards and turn them into an AI friendly version of your scorecard. And then you have the ability to let the AI analyze 100% of your call interactions versus what you might, manually be doing today between 2 and 3%. And so the great thing about this is even we see that agents love this as well, because it's really challenging to get an idea of how an agent's performing by only, evaluating 2 to 3% of the interactions they're having. And so if you can really get a good view and good details around, what this agent is doing 100% of the time, then, if there's a bad call that maybe he was having a bad day or she was having a bad day, or some of these outliers that sometimes might be part of the 2 or 3% that we analyze, we really don't have a clear understanding of, what this agent's doing well and where the challenges are. And so with a solution like this, not only does this let the company, breathe a little better because every interaction is being evaluated and compliance is being tracked, and you can, we've got alerts and things that happen in real time to address those things. But now from a coaching standpoint, you really have a good set of data that we pull into the one-on-one features in Proponisi and let you have access to when you're doing one-on-ones, so that you really are addressing things that are challenges, and you really are recognizing things that they're doing well, not just something, that might occur once every now and again, but again, that's when you're using a small amount of data. And then the other one, this post-interaction call summary, really is one of the biggest game changers in the contact center industry so far, which is the ability to have the AI provide an interaction, or after the interaction, provide a call summary, or what you might call the account notes, automatically, where you can have that in a format that you want. We push that back to be, posted into your CRM or your, case management system where you're handling your customer inquiries. And call notes, have had an interesting change over the years, where it used to be there was after call work where agents, could take 15 seconds, 10 seconds maybe after the call and put those notes in the account and then jump to the next call. What we tend to see now with most contact centers is this is now a requirement that you do it in the call. So you're actually trying to deliver this, great customer service where you're showing, you're focused and showing attention to the customer while multitasking and trying to put these notes in and making sure the notes are accurate. And, even in the best cases, most of the time you can tell when an agent is doing that. And sometimes they just even say, let me put some more notes here on the account while you're waiting. So this is also a great component for agents to remove that, because now they don't have that burden on them. They can focus on the customer. And the ROI behind it, we were just looking at it with a client the other day who does about 300,000 calls a month, and somewhere close to 250 agents, I think. And after looking at how much time the notes were taking for the agents to do, when we calculated that out based on just something as simple as the loaded salary cost per hour for an agent, not even taking into consideration, the supervisor costs and training costs and some other costs, but just on the salary alone, it was about a $325,000 annual savings for them just by shaving off that, 10 seconds. And customer focus increased because the agent's not trying to struggle with keeping a connection and, taking notes. It's just like, you don't want to walk into someone's office and start a conversation and then have them pull their phone up and be typing with someone while they're talking to you. It really is a best practice now with the AI to just remove that burden from the agent. And then, of course, real-time assistance is another component that works well, where the AI can be listening in the call, and it can interact with a knowledge base, which Proponisi has a knowledge base that clients can create their own knowledge base and then use this with the AI to get any kind of policies and procedures or help. It's connected to that KBS and is an expert now in being able to help the agent in real time. And then again, just leveraging the data, the reports that can come out of, features like these that I've just described. You get so much data out of all of these conversations and interactions that now you really have specific coaching opportunities and can have a profile that's more accurate than you've ever been able to have about the agents. And how they're doing their job. And we're really big believers in not just doing, the feature here that I've described, but we have a lot of things where Proponisi automatically recognizes good performance, can send kudos or some sort of encouragement, can automatically assign micro training for areas it's identified in this data that needs improvement, or push, tailor-made coaching tips that are personalized based on agents' interests. So we really are focused on not only how much this can help the organization and improve efficiencies and reduce costs, but how does it lift the agent up and get them more engaged, less burnout, and performing at a higher level. Again, anything that you're doing, involving frontline teams from day one is really a good idea. Even if that's taking calls away from them and moving it to a customer-facing channel that is some sort of AI agent, or the tools I just mentioned, that's evaluating their calls. I think the more involvement you can get them in, and also having them part of the feedback loops I've mentioned, would be great, and highly recommended. This bullet here, really leveraging AI, our philosophy is that it's a performance enabler. It's not a replacement tool. It's really something that is going to lift agents up, lift supervisors up for that matter, and continue to help people upskill and learn more skills. And there will be, changes in agent and supervisor roles where agents could be managing AI agents, and having several agents that they're the backup for, just as an example of where this could be going. And then again, scale gradually with those continuous feedback loops, and data versus drive is really, there's going to be a lot of data that you can get, but how do you drive that data in a way that is meaningful and helpful and you can take action on? That's one thing we do really well, where the system can actually look at all of this data and take action automatically and do more informing to agents and supervisors and executives of what is happening and how Proponisi is addressing it through its automation using these tools. And again, why you shouldn't fear it, and this is kind of the sunshine and Skittles slide. 92% of agents report AI improves job satisfaction. they really like things like the note taking and data lookups that could be removed from them. I've been in several call centers recently and observed agents who have Notepad pulled up, who have a browser pulled up, who have, Google search pulled up, have another application pulled up, and they're making notes in Notepad and doing all of these different, overlapping things. And the more this AI can kind of take some of that off their plate and let them really focus on handling the customer and delivering a good experience, is a win for everyone. So, and again, there's some other stats here that just talk about the reasons why you should look at, leveraging AI, which, again, the better agents are, the more focused they are, the more you're removing that tedious work off their plate. You're seeing an increase in CSAT scores, and customers now expecting AI-enabled support, whether that's a gated component that maybe for the easy things they can answer, and it's more enjoyable than the easy things they could do in your IVR. It's quicker, it's easier to interact with than an IVR. And then again, supervisors can really leverage AI to how they manage their team and making sure that the service and delivery of service is elevates and improves based on all of these tools. And then just a couple of other stats as we wind up. By 2029, AI is projected to handle 80% of standard queries, which again just shifts that focus of agents having a higher level skill set and focusing on more complex things, or the white glove approach we mentioned. 70% of contact centers are already investing in AI, and embracing AI today ensures teams stay ahead of how things are going to continue to change. And then finally, I'll just leave with this thought, if you're worried about replacement, and this would apply to supervisors or probably anyone, it's not that AI is going to replace agents, it's agents using AI that'll replace agents. So with that, I think we're coming up with maybe 10 minutes left. I'm happy to answer any questions, and while I'm waiting for questions, I'll just do a little plug here for Michael Tamer, our CEO. Has a webinar coming up next month that I would highly encourage you to register for and be on the lookout for. And if you didn't know it, he also has a podcast you can find on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or probably most of the podcast subscriptions that you might be using. But any questions from anyone?
And not seeing any questions coming in, Scott.
Yeah. Well, if there are no other questions, I appreciate your time today. Hopefully you enjoyed the journey into AI, and would love to hear from you. Would also love to, share how we can help in your AI strategy as you begin to embrace it or to improve what you're already doing. We'd love to connect with you, so feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to set up a call, and would love to learn more about what you do and share a little bit more about Proponisi and how we're embracing AI.